Hello and a very warm welcome to the Pitchside Podcast. I'm your host, the HOD of the PSP. Like, share, comment on the YouTube version of this podcast and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Enable notifications to receive all the updates from these episodes of the podcast, which you can listen to on Spotify, Google Podcasts or any other podcast listening platform. Follow us on social media site PSP on Twitter, PitchsidePod on Instagram, and help us on the way to our first K. Welcome to episode 150 of the podcast. As much as I feel inclined to talk about Laliga, of course, since it is the hardest title race and the hardest thing going in European football at the moment, I want to start from somewhere else. I want to start from a different league. I would start from Italy and the SerieA, and a thing that has as much importance, if not, more consequences and more repercussions for its nature, really, but it's an absolute necessity, I would say, for me personally, to start with, to just get a point across in Serie A, and it was, of course, around 35 as well of that league. Certainly a lot of things on the line for the top four spots. It was a pretty interesting Sunday yesterday, of course, after Inter Milan formally announced themselves as the champions by defeating Sampdoria 5-1 in the league on Sunday. Genoa lost to Sassuolo 2-1. Cagliari defeated Benevento 3-1. A draw saw Hellas Verona share the spoils with Torino at home, and Parma smashing Atalanta smashing Parma 5-2. It was a brilliant performance from them, getting the second place in the league. Roma defeated Crotone 5-0, getting a little bit of a boost. At least getting a win at the moment is really good to keep that last European spot for Roma. And of course, in the main event of the evening, it was Juventus hosting AC Milan. And it was another bad performance from Juve, let's be fair. It was another bad performance from Juventus, losing 3-0. For the first 45 minutes, it was textbook Juve. It was, Juve starting slow, not knowing how to do the game exactly. I mean, the way they started the game is pretty bad, but it became the norm this season. You don't really get surprised any longer of that start. I'm still not convinced of some of the choices that Pirlo makes. Adrien Rabiot and Bentancur are really not the best duo you could start with in this one, in the midfield. You had Danilo as an option. You could have played him on the right and played Cuadrado a little higher up, or you play, and you move Weston McKennie to a central position. I mean, he adds up when he plays as a number 8. Juve lost a lot of the ball in the midfield. AC Milan were pretty terrific, I would say, in the way they pressed Juventus high up the pitch and didn't allow them to take the ball smoothly and move it comfortably from the back to front. Scored a goal before half-time, which was pretty crucial, I would say. I mean, it comes down to the goalkeeper, pretty much. I would say Chesney didn't clear the ball quickly, pretty good. So I think he takes responsibility for that. And then Brahim Diaz's finish was just amazing as well. In the second half, the start was good from Juventus as well. It was pretty decent. But then AC Milan had a penalty. Frank Kessié missed the penalty. And you think afterwards, okay, here that is, Juventus are going to make the comeback now and going to be winning this game. But it didn't happen. They were even slower than the first half. That's the difference between this performance and other performance. At least in the second half in other games, Juventus had a resurge. But in this one, they didn't. They were even slower. They only had one shot on target for the whole game, which translates every sort of suffering for them. You have, of course, the penalty, by the way, was a handball. Matthias de Ligt is in the game, so you have to have a penalty for a handball. Obviously, it wasn't from him, it was from Collini. But, still. Milan scored the second thanks to Ante Rebic. Beautiful strike from outside the box from Ante Rebic in the 78th minute. And then, of course, it was panic time for Juve, obviously. But after that, of course, they tried a couple of opportunities. They couldn't quite get into the box of AC Milan. Again, they were pretty slow and ponderous. And then Fikayo Tomori, of all people, from a set-piece defending, which is one of the worst things that Juve do this season. I saw, I think, a trilogy of set-piece defending being bad for Juve this season. I saw the wall, I saw the focus when every kick is taken quickly, and I saw the proper set piece taken and the marking is bad. I saw every sort of aspect of it. Somehow Italian defending has become atrocious for Juve this season, and they don't even defend set pieces really well. If Fikayo Tomori, of all people, scores a header, you know that your defense is really doing bad. And AC Milan pretty much, the kudos to them, credit to them all the way through. They took the game by the scruff of the neck, and they absolutely didn't let go. They pressed Juventus really well. They took their chances, which is the most important thing against a side like Juve, and they really secured themselves. And this victory is important on so many levels, like not just the top 4 spots or the victory itself against Juventus. The fact that it's 3-0, it makes it really, really, really crucial, because in the case of a points being equal at the end of the season, if they end up on the same number of points, Milan would have the advantage because they lost 3-1 in Milan, where they won 3-0 away from home. So it's going to be quite the incredible tally, because the Serie A, of course, adheres to the head-to-head competition as well as the goal difference as a second method to separate any two teams. So at the moment, that's why Atalanta are second ahead of AC Milan, despite having the same number of points of 72. Again, it's a crucial victory for AC Milan. The Europa League is a real possibility for Juve. They're really seeing that goes to the Europa League at the moment. And with the performances that they have at the moment, there's no justification really for Juve being in the Champions League with these kind of performances. And I want to stop at a certain point that I wanted to get off my chest, really. And that is why I wanted to start with Serie A. Now, when we go at Barcelona, and we have it go at Barcelona, and we look at Barcelona, and we say, okay, they were bad. What are the reasons? We would point at Messi amongst them. But when Juve lose, we point at Andrea Pirlo, we point at the other players, obviously, but you cannot point at Cristiano Ronaldo, which I think is a pretty wrong testament, a pretty wrong thing to say. Yes, we all respect Ronaldo as a legend, as an all-time great, as someone who did so much for football, achieved so much in football, raised the level him and Messi so high that, anybody is going to be coming in the next generation is going to be compared to them as a linchpin. But at the moment, he's just average. I'm really honest with myself. He's just average at the moment. This is the worst phase of his career. And in this worst phase, this is his worst season of them all. And I know he's top of the scoring chart in Serie A and scoring 27 goals, but try and look each of his performances this season and try to give me one standout performance. One standout performance. One when you could say Cristiano Ronaldo was brilliant throughout the game and completely, took Juventus to the win or took Juventus to achieve something. You just can't find any game where he just, he scored goals. He still scored goals because obviously it's Cristiano Ronaldo and he will still score, but he wasn't outstanding. He didn't have outstanding performance. Like in the era where he was in Real Madrid, every season he would have at least 2 or 3 outstanding performances that will change the course of the season of his club. How many outstanding ones he did have for Juventus since he arrived, actually. Not just, this season. Since he arrived. How many outstanding performances do you think Cristiano had this season in Serie A or in any other competition? I would say 0. Because, realistically speaking, you could not blame Messi in Barcelona, but not blame Cristiano in Juve. He's a part of the problem. His statistics at the game was really horrific. He lost the ball 16 times. He didn't dribble past anyone. He only won 1 duel and had 1 shot that was blocked. It was, realistically speaking, people should pretty much be realistic here and admit that, as much as he's great, time takes off and takes over people, and age catches up to anyone, and I think it started catching up to Cristiano Ronaldo. If he doesn't score, if not scoring a free kick in 73 attempts is not being average or is not a drop in the level, I don't know what it is. Cristiano Ronaldo used to score those like penalties. He doesn't care about them. He went through from the phase at Sporting Lisbon and Man United where he was brilliant, he was explosive, you see the dribbles, the tricks and flicks Cristiano. Then to Real Madrid, where he had like two sorts of phases in Real Madrid. The 2009 to 2014 Cristiano, where he was scoring goals, he was still showing some flicks and tricks, but he's still not somehow the GOAT finished product. Like in terms of being a legend, he was still not the finished product yet. And then, of course, came that Silver Laden spell from 2014 to 2018. He won 4 Champions Leagues. He contributed in all of them, scored amazing goals and all of that, and that what really cemented Cristiano Ronaldo's place in the pantheon of football, winning the Ballon d'Ors that he did and all of that. But now Juventus, he went to a complete different phase. He went to a really, really bad place pretty quickly. And, Juventus expected him to achieve more. In fact, they achieved less with Cristiano Ronaldo in Juve. Again, I mean, I just want to get this off my chest because it annoys me to see people trying to give him an excuse just because he's a legend and not give an excuse for Messi. And again, I'm not in the Messi-Ronaldo debate, so I don't want to put it as a personal slate for me. It's not, because I don't want to get into that debate. I don't want to take sides. I don't want to take camps. I don't want to do any of that. In my opinion, both are great, and I enjoyed both. Next week, of course, the round 36 in Serie A, Napoli face Udinese, Cagliari, Fiorentina, Atalanta, Benevento, Bologna, Genoa, Inter face Roma in a big game, Lazio, Parma, Sampdoria, Spezia, Sassuolo, Juventus, Torino, Milan, and Crotone, Hellas Verona. Of course, these are midweek fixtures. We're going to be talking about them hopefully tomorrow. To catch up light on them even more. The table at the moment stands like this: Inter Milan with 85 points, 72 for Atalanta and Milan, 70 for Napoli, 69 for Juve at 5th, 64 for Lazio at 6th, 58th for Roma, 56 for Sassuolo, 45 for Sampdoria, 43 Verona, 40 for Udinese and Bologna, Fiorentina 38, Genoa 36, 35 for Cagliari and Torino, Spezia 34, 31 for Benevento, Parma and Crotone. I think officially we could say that they were relegated to Serie B, and Benevento probably are still awaiting their fate in the next couple of rounds. Let's get on now to Spain, to La Liga, where, of course, the title race is still heating up and it's reaching a pretty big climax, and the next 3 weeks are going to be so crucial in Spain that it's going to be defining, obviously, how the season is going to be ending. And after Barcelona drawn against Atletico Madrid, Real Madrid decided to do the same pretty much with Sevilla and draw 2-2 at Valdebebas in a game that was, I think, I could describe it as the inverse of what happened in the first game. If you remember the first game, and of course I reviewed that here on the channel, it was Real Madrid defending pretty much for the most of the game, scoring a goal and then just, trying to nick the game off Sevilla. This was the reverse of that. This was Sevilla starting strong, attacking, creating opportunities, even scoring a goal from Fernando, which was a bad marking from Casemiro at first, and then Fernando, of all people, took Casemiro off and dribbled past him and then scored a goal. That is how bad situation got for Real Madrid by the end. Then you have the second half, and then after the goal pretty much, credit for Real Madrid to making a reaction, credit for them to up in the game a little bit, still without effectiveness for the most part. Marco Asensio scored a goal, brought them back together the game. Then you have Ivan Rakitic, being awarded a penalty. I mean, VAR, by the way, VAR was the complete hero of the night, I would say, in Valdebebas. First of all, cancelled the goal for Karim Benzema for the offside margin you'd expect to see in the Premier League. The kind of, hairline thin kind of line where you just cannot fathom it visibly how that could be offside, for example. Then you have, of course, the penalty situation for Sevilla, where it should have been a penalty on the other end for Real Madrid, but then, of course, because Sevilla's penalty is prior, you had, Eder Militao being awarded a penalty. Obviously, the Real Madrid fans were absolutely furious, and looking at it, maybe understandably so, but still, it is what it is. The penalty was awarded. Ivan Rakitic, of all people, scored the second goal, and it looked for a while that it's done and dusted. It is pretty much, Real Madrid are going to be out of it, and Sevilla are going to be back in it. And then, of course, Toni Kroos, the shot deflected and Eden Hazard. The goal is claimed by Eden Hazard. Somehow that counts as a goal for Eden Hazard. Do not ask me how or why, but it counts as a goal for Eden Hazard. Unfortunately, that's how life works. It's a goal for Eden Hazard, 2-2 for Real Madrid. They save a point that could prove really crucial, considering the end of the season, the fact that they have advantage over Barcelona, and any slip for Atletico Madrid next, and they win, they would have advantage over Atletico as well. So the head-to-head competition is a pretty big deal. I mean, unfortunately for Sevilla, if they won against Bilbao and they drawn here, would have been talking about them still in the game, still in the title race. I mean, they weren't contenders to begin with. Somehow they got through in the end and they sort of caught up with the rest. But definitely they had a great season. They would be, of course, content of being in the Champions League, but definitely at a certain point you'd try and look up and say, you know what, we need to go next level, we need to win La Liga. I hope for that to happen. I really hope for that to happen. A draw that was, again, the inverse of the last game between those two in the league. Real Madrid pressed them, tried and tried. I mean, mostly it was the same passive possession that Real Madrid do for most of the game. The choices Zidane have are really limited. You can see, I mean, when you look at Sevilla, they did their 5 changes, and you look at Real Madrid, they did only 3, and you understand really the squad isn't that deep. He had to bring on Miguel Gutierrez at the moment to replace Marcelo in the game, and you really can understand how frustrated he could be when he brings on Eden Hazard for Vinicius Jr. I mean, Eden Hazard scored, quote unquote, big air quotes, Eden Hazard scored in the game. Yeah, it's still somewhat of a, it feels like an anomaly. And because it is an anomaly, I thought the goal should be claimed by Toni Kroos, the deflection of Hazard into the net. Real Madrid got a point, maybe a crucial one for their league hopes, but I don't think they will have enough in them to surpass the opponents that they have, because the run they have till the end of the season is pretty hard. They have Granada, then they have Athletic Bilbao, then they finish by facing Villarreal. It's not an easy run up in the end of the season. While you look at Atletico Madrid, for example, they face Real Sociedad, then the next couple of games they have against Osasuna, and then against Valladolid. Also, Barcelona, look at their run-up, they have Levante in the next round, away from home, then they host Celta Vigo, then they finish by going to defeat, to face Eibar. So it's absolutely important for Real Madrid. For every one of those games they need to keep, the same momentum somehow. They need to keep fresh and fit, which is almost impossible in the turnover of this season. A congested fixture list on its own right, even in the normal season, would have been hard by this point to keep the players fit and fresh. The next week the turnover is coming off pretty quickly, so it will be. The games are going to be played tomorrow. The game weekend is going to be starting tomorrow. It's going to be spent across Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And of course, it's going to be a big one for Real Madrid in the end of the season, and that keeps everything well poised between the top 3 at the moment in the table of the league. 2 points separate the top 3. It's going to be a title race that is going to go down to the wire. Next week, of course, Osasuna hosts Cadiz, and not next week, game week really, because it starts tomorrow. Osasuna, Cadiz, Elche, Deportivo Alaves, Levante, Barcelona on Tuesday. Then you have Sevilla, Valencia, on Wednesday, Celta Vigo, Getafe, Huesca versus Athletic Bilbao, Atletico Madrid versus Real Sociedad. Then on Thursday, Real Madrid go to Granada away, Eibar versus Real Betis, and Real Valladolid versus Villarreal. The table at the moment, as we mentioned, 77 points for Atletico, 75 for Real Madrid and Barcelona. Real Madrid with the head-to-head advantage, 71 for Sevilla, 56 for Real Sociedad, 52 for Villarreal, 51 for Betis, Celta Vigo with 47, 46 for Athletic Bilbao, Granada 43, 45, Cadiz 43, Osasuna 41, Valencia 39 as well as Levante, Getafe 34, Alaves 32 points, 31 for Valladolid, Huesca, Elche and Eibar at the bottom of the table. It's still pretty intense as well in the bottom of the table of La Liga, not just at the top, with 29 points. Before moving on and finishing with the Premier League, a quick move to Bundesliga, as of course a couple of games were played yesterday, and definitely games that were important on a couple of levels for the top 4 spots and for the relegation battlers down the table. 3 games took place yesterday. FC Koln lost to Freiburg, were smashed in fact by Freiburg 4-1, despite, having a decent game where they dominated more, but they weren't as effective as they could be. A couple of early goals for Freiburg in the early goings in the first 20 minutes by Niels Petersen and Ermedin Demirovic, give them the 2-0 lead at halftime. Then Sebastian Andersson brought it to 2-1 for Köln. They missed the penalty from Andre Duda. Then, of course, they had, Vincenzo Grifo and Jonathan Schmidt adding the 3rd and 4th goal in the last moments of the game, in this stoppage time, to twist the knife inside the Köln hearts. Of course, they're really battling for relegation at the moment. They have slim hopes of surviving really at the table, with Hertha Berlin, still having game in hand, with Bremen, Bielefeld on 31 points, all of them. Köln on 29 points. It will need a heroic effort from them, I think, to keep themselves in the Bundesliga table. Eintracht Frankfurt drawn 1-1, and they lose that top 4 spot with that result to Borussia Dortmund after drawing against FC Mainz. They're really doing well in the second half of the season, Mainz. They transformed themselves from a side that was threatened by relegation to a side that is really playing to improve their finish. And the table, Hertha Berlin, of course, drawn against Arminia Bielefeld 0-0, dropping yet another couple of points in the struggle for relegation. Of course, they're still threatened again, but they have a game in hand, so you don't know exactly how things are going to pan out for them. Next round, of course, in the Bundesliga is going to be played next weekend. Arminia Bielefeld face Hoffenheim, Leverkusen face Union Berlin, Borussia Mönchengladbach face Stuttgart, Augsburg face Werder Bremen, Schalke face Eintracht Frankfurt, Hertha Berlin face FC Köln, a direct clash in the bottom of the table. Then you have Freiburg, Bayern München, Mainz, Borussia Dortmund and Leipzig facing Wolfsburg. That is going to be a meaty game in the top 4 of the Bundesliga. To round off the episode, let's go to the Premier League and a league where the title is decided. Man City are going to be winning it. Yes, it was denied once again this week, but they still can win it, and they still will win it eventually, and they will celebrate it in front, hopefully in front of their fans at the stadium, and make a victory lap. But of course, Sunday's result were pretty uninteresting, uninspiring, if anything. Nothing really special happened, unless you are West Ham United losing to Everton at home 1-0 to dash your top 4 spots, to at least to, a dent in the armour of those hopes, because 5 points are West Ham now from Leicester City at 4th. Leicester City, who, at least they have a cushion. It felt like they're going to be dropping below 4th, but they had a cushion of 5 points, so you really think they're fine. But still, you don't know what could happen in the last 3 games of the season or so it's going to be quite incredible to watch. Wolves defeated Brighton 2-1. They turned things around, but that needed Brighton to be 9 men in the game, have Lewis Dunk sent off for the last man, and then late in the game, Neil Maupay, who else but him, was sent off for an argument. He seems to enjoy having those kinds of problems, isn't he? Last season with Arsenal, this season with Arsenal, and this season with Wolverhampton as well. Wolverhampton, a victory that comes, I think, at the right time for them. This season hasn't been exactly that good. Obviously, losing Raúl Jiménez was a big point for them, and a transitional point of the season, a really turning point of their fortunes. They're still in the league, they're still fighting. They will improve their position. A warm spot in the middle of the table is pretty good for them, considering that they lost a lot of players for injuries. They had a pretty depleted squad by the end of it. Aston Villa, who lost as well a one man late on in the game. Ollie Watkins was sent off late on, but that came after Manchester United sealed the deal. A 3-1 victory against Aston Villa. A 3-1 victory that pretty much could be described as pedestrian, because it's going to be the start of a grinding week for the Red Devils, because they're going to be playing like 4 matches in 8 days. They play Leicester on Tuesday, they play Liverpool on Thursday, then then of course they would have the next round of the Premier League action to play, which is going to be, of course, playing Leicester. They play Leicester City on Tuesday, then they play Liverpool on a Thursday, then next week they will play Fulham. So it's going to be it's going to be a terrific, really, kind of a week for Manchester United. Surely the rotation is going to be there. They will be changing. They will be making changes. I think one of the worst, probably, incidents of the game was Harry Maguire going down injured for United. So that's going to be a big loss for them. And if it turns out it's going to be long-term injury, a big loss for England. As much as he's not a great defender, I don't rate him as a great defender, but I think he's a big loss for United, at least as a captain and as a presence on the pitch, as well as England. Edison Cavani again coming to the rescue. Mason Greenwood scoring the second after Bruno Fernandes opened the scoring from the penalty spot. It was Aston Villa versus United, and of course it was Paul Pogba getting a penalty on Douglas Luiz. Some things do not change. A weird penalty again, a tripping one, just like the one on the first leg between the two sides. Won by Paul Pogba and Douglas Luiz. Bruno Fernandes scores, and there was no way turning back from that. You can say that Aston Villa were good for the first 20-25 minutes in the first half. Scored a goal by Bernard Traore. Brilliant finish, by the way, from him. As much as it is bad defending from Lindelof, I would say. But it was a great match from United in the second half. Afterwards, they scored 3 goals. Again, Edison Cavani proving why he deserved a contract extension with United and why he could be a short-term solution for the next season or so, because obviously in the long term they cannot rely on him. They should be looking for another striker, so it would be pretty interesting to see how things are going to pan out with him. And then you have, of course, as I mentioned, Everton defeating West Ham 1-0. The only goal coming in early in the game by Dominic Calvert-Lewin, 24 minutes for him, of course. with Everton, being on the defensive. Really, West Ham dominated the game, but they couldn't quite get there. They weren't exactly successful in creating. 0 shots on target for them, despite 68% of possession. And Arsenal defeated West Bromwich Albion 3-1. I mean, you expect them to win, West Bromwich, really. The only thing that this game confirmed is West Brom getting relegated, going down to the Championship. Willian was back on the score sheet. Finally, he scored. Well, it seems like he couldn't even get a shot on target. He scored a beautiful free kick, by the way. Matthias Pereira made it 2-1 for West Brom after the 2 goals from Emil Smith-Rowe in the 29th minute and Nicolas Pepe scoring a complete beauty in the 35th minute. I mean, yes, a victory for Arsenal coming at the right point of time, I would say. They were out of the Europa League. They're not seeing European football. Arteta's future is on the line, really, at Arsenal at the moment. The report suggesting that he may be considered to be out of the club by next season. I personally think that he should be given more time. I know that, Frank Lampard was a legend at Chelsea and he wasn't given time. But let's be fair. I mean, Arteta didn't have the same stints as Lampard. At least he had a team to try on his managerial sort of kinks and tricks for Frank Lampard. He sort of coached Derby before going to Chelsea, but Arteta didn't do that. He was an assistant coach for Guardiola at City, so this first managerial job was pretty big straight off the bat for him because of the expectations, because of the disappointments of the last couple of seasons, and obviously because of the results that Arsenal have been having as of late. Fulham face Burnley, of course, on Monday to finish off the round, and certainly a big round coming on midweek in the Premier League. It's going to be played over the course of the whole week, really. It's going to be played on Tuesday, then you have Wednesday, then of course games are going to be on Friday, Saturday and Sunday in the Premier League for round 36. That's it for me for this episode. I was your boy, the HAD of the PSB. Like, share, comment on the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, enable notifications to receive all the updates from these episodes of the podcast and all the content on the channel. Spotify, Google Podcasts, or any other platform, you can listen there. Follow the social media site, PSB on Instagram. And until next time, until tomorrow's episode, I will be seeing you soon. Goodbye.